Okay, the Dogon are a priestly, modern-day African tribe. They're outwardly primitive, and they are from Mali, which is a country in the northwest bulge of Africa. And in my opinion, the Dogon tribe, for anybody who is interested in ancient symbols or ancient religion and what it all means, the Dogon are a great untapped resource. And my first exposure to the Dogon came, as you said, through Robert Temple's book, The Serious Mystery. And I began following some of his sources when I began to research about the Dogon. The thing that brought the Dogon to the attention of the public was the fact that they seemed to know some things about astronomy that they shouldn't know without having powerful telescopes. They knew that the Sirius star system involved two stars, not one, and that one of them was a very tiny dwarf star, and they knew that the orbital period of the two stars for each other, among other things. And so I began to pursue that, and I discovered that that's just really the tip of the iceberg. You might remember that Carl Sagan proposed that the Dogon knowledge about these stars came from some modern visitor to the tribe.
Right.
But when you get down into the Dogon system, you realize that this information about Sirius is part of a much larger system of knowledge. And all the words used to describe that system are really ancient Egyptian words. And so from my perspective, I can't imagine a modern visitor who could have come to the Dogon and told them these things who would have couched them in ancient Egyptian words.
Now explain that a little bit more.
Okay, the words that define the system that scientific knowledge is part of are all ancient Egyptian words. And so if you imagine some modern-day scientist coming to visit with a Dogon and telling them things they didn't know, how possibly could that person have been capable of giving that information to the Dogon using ancient Egyptian words?
Okay, all right, I follow you. There's no way they could.
Right. And so that's the first indication that we're talking about a system that really is ancient.
Now, how did this first start? How did we first learn about the Dogon tribe and the Serious Mystery, even before Temple wrote the book?
Okay, there are two French anthropologists, a man by the name of Marcel Griol, who was the foremost anthropologist of his day, and his student, whose name was Germain Dieterle. And they spent the better part of 30 years, starting in 1930, living among the Dogon and researching them and filming them and interviewing them and studying every aspect of their religion and documenting it. And they produced a work called The Pale Fox, which is the definitive statement about what the Dogon religion is and what it means. And that's one of my primary resources. Now, I have an advantage over Temple in that at the time Temple wrote that anthropological study hadn't been translated from French into English, and he only had a partial translation of small pieces of it, whereas I was able to work from the entire translated text. But having this text is a lot like having the teacher's copy of the book. You remember back in grade school,
Sure.
You had your copy of the book, but the teacher's copy had all the answers to the questions.
Yeah, that's the book we wanted.
That's right. Well, the Dogon priests are living priests. This is like having an Egyptian priest that you could sit down and talk to and ask questions of. And having that, anytime you have a question about what does this symbol mean or what does this term mean, you can go to this anthropological study and you can go to a dictionary of the Dogon language and a couple of other texts that are related to those, and you can come up with what look an awful lot like answers to questions that have seemed pretty formidable without them.
What can you tell us about the Sirius star system? Let's put that in perspective.
Okay, the Sirius star system is important in a lot of ancient cultures. The Dogon, part of the problem with the Dogon is they don't have a native written language, and so we don't have any historical records to be able to prove that they were once closely associated with the Egyptians. But pretty much everything the Dogon do, you can count on the fact that the ancient Egyptians did too. The Dogon are like a crossroads for several ancient traditions. They have rituals that are a lot like ancient Judaism, and they have civic practices that are like ancient Egypt, and they have a cosmology that's like ancient Buddhism. And so here you have in one package information that binds all of these traditions together, and Sirius is sort of at the heart of that. the Dogon have a festival called the Sigi Festival. Now, the word Sigi is really an Egyptian word, Sakai, that means to celebrate a festival. So you find this term turning up in ancient cultures around the world, even in the names of different ancient tribes, this concept of celebrating a deity or celebrating a cosmological concept. So Sirius is central to all this stuff. Now, Robert Temple said that the reason it was central is because the teachers of the Dogon, the ones who brought them this ancient knowledge, were from Sirius. I can't disprove that. That might be true. That might not be true. There's certainly indications that it could be. In the Egyptian hieroglyphic language, the word for Sirius is pronounced the same as the word for teacher.
Okay, there's no doubt, though, that whether they got it from extraterrestrials or whatever, they did not have modern telescopes available to see a second star system. Is that correct?
That's right. But if you go far enough back in any of these ancient traditions, what you bump up against is a belief on the part of the culture that they received civilizing instruction from somebody who knew more about it than they did.
Okay. Now, this system that's there now, are we saying that extraterrestrials live in that star system region and they came here and possibly told this tribe, this is where we're from?
That's one of the possibilities, yes. However, there are also astronomical reasons why Sirius might be important without it necessarily being true that someone came from there.
Did they ever describe the Dogon tribe what these beings might have been?
Yes, they do. Robert Temple provides descriptions from the Dogon that he believes are descriptions of the alien. If you boil it down to the essence, the Dogon priests say that these were spiritual beings and that they were concerned about what the long-term effect would be of long-term contact between themselves and material beings like us. And so their answer to that problem was they took 8 Dogon tribespeople and removed them from the rest of the tribe and instructed them in this civilizing system, and then sent them back to teach everybody else, and that sort of limited any detrimental effects that might happen from them being around us.
How long were these visitors here? Do we know?
No, that's hard to say, but what we can say is you can see evidence.
The home of the Dogon tribe, who prophesied the return of the Syrian gods and goddesses, the Nomos, was in Mali, northwest Africa. Was it a coincidence that the shuttle was passing directly over northwest Africa, their precise location during the astounding incident when the tethered satellite was swarmed by UFOs with the signature of the star system of Sirius written all over them? But as the Dogon priests were keepers of this ancient knowledge from pre-dynastic Egypt around 3000 BC, and the shuttle would be passing directly over Egypt within a few moments, it appeared as yet another coincidence beyond reason. We had to look at what the Egyptians knew about the star system of Sirius. Because the Dogon tribe migrated to northwest Africa originally from Egypt in 3000 BC, we would have to look at what the ancient Egyptians knew about the star system of Sirius and the great gods and goddesses who came to Earth thousands of years ago and brought humankind from primitive life to modern civilization. Because today we may have an indication that they have returned, perhaps to bring us to yet a higher level of civilization. In Robert Temple's book, The Sirius Mystery, we learn of the Syrian water god connection to ancient Egypt from the ancient Greek father of history, Herodotus, who studied in Egypt during his life in the 5th century BC. Herodotus details an amazing connection to Sirius and water when he recounts how the ancient Egyptians channeled large amounts of water through canals from the Nile River, called Sirius in ancient times, to the many sacred temples, sites, and the pyramids themselves. The ancient kings had their own burial chambers filled with water to emulate their gods and goddesses' likeness to water. Even Khephren pyramid had a passage bringing water in from the Nile, which encircled it like an island, in which the ancients said the great Cheops lies, symbolizing the ancient god of Egypt as an amphibian. Herodotus described how the incredible maze of canals and passages bringing water to so many of the sacred temples and shrines, even the pyramids themselves, was a sight that he felt surpassed even the pyramids themselves. The great Egyptian goddess Isis, the wife of the chief of the Egyptian god Osiris, symbolized as the all-seeing eye, was herself also symbolized as an all-seeing eye with a throne. Osiris was said by one of Aristotle's companions who visited Egypt, heard of an ancient myth that Osiris could not walk because his legs were grown together. Does this tell us once again that he too was an amphibian from the star system of Sirius? Known to the ancient Egyptians as the star system Sirius herself, Isis tells that, "I am she who goes out to the dog star." Because she is the wife of Osiris, they must both be the same kind of beings, and they must both be from the same star system of Sirius. Isis spoke of her travels to the star system of Sirius, so how did she travel there? Was she actually just visiting Earth from Sirius? Did she travel to Earth from Sirius in a spacecraft? Being a goddess of water, would she travel between Earth and Sirius in a watery spacecraft, just as the Dogons told? Both the Dogon and Isis called Sirius the dog star and symbolized it as a dog. But why? Perhaps it was because the great Egyptian god Anubis, symbolized as a half-man, half-dog, god was said to be the god of the star system Sirius by the ancient Egyptians. Anubis was also known as the god of the dead, who would guide the pharaohs and the spiritually adept of ancient Egypt upon their death in a celestial boat to their heavens in the star system of Sirius. The mystery as to what caused the water erosion around the Sphinx has baffled archaeologists since its discovery. The water erosion markings were much too high on the Sphinx to suggest that the Nile River had ever flooded that high. But Herodotus' accounts of channeling water to fill small lakes that encompassed the shrines of their Syrian gods and goddesses. Could the ancient Egyptians have built these giant water receptacles to make a place to stay for their half-human, half-amphibian gods and goddesses as they would visit them from the star system of Sirius? The mystery of the Sphinx revealed itself to Robert Temple as a half-dog, half-human, instead of the half-human, half-lion pervading theory. Temple argues that the body of the Sphinx is too long in its torso to be a body of a lion, as lions have rather short torsos, whereas dogs have very long ones. So Temple felt that the body of the Sphinx was a dog, as an emulation of the Syrian god Anubis, symbolizing what the Dogon tribe called the dog star, Sirius. But once again, Temple extracts from the Greek historian Herodotus that the body of the Sphinx was originally lying in a man-made lake surrounded by water, explaining the mystery as to why the Sphinx was so eroded by water at such a high level. This also demonstrated that Anubis was a god of the waters. As the great gods of Sirius living in Egypt were masters of water and presumably knew how to manipulate the waters, could they send and direct balls of water from deep space and bring rain in large quantities and transform the arid deserts into a thriving oasis with rich agriculture? It was written that Egypt in ancient times had a rich and thriving agriculture. Could these ancient masters of water have turned a desert into an oasis because they had such power over the waters? We are reminded of the many great miracles of mastery over water. When Moses had God part the Red Sea, when God caused the great flood in the time of Noah and warned him of the flood well in advance of its arrival. Could this be because Noah's God had mastery over water and he knew the flood was coming because God just had to send huge amounts of water in from deep space and have it rain down on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights? We are also reminded of the many miracles of Jesus Christ, where he walked on the water and turned the sea into wine, and he commanded the sea to a calm when his disciples feared that the severest ocean storm would claim their lives, once again showing mastery over water. Robert Temple also wrote in his book, The Sirius Mystery, that the Dogons actually believed that Jesus too was a Nomo from the star system of Sirius, and therefore a god who had mastery over the waters.